Hey students, welcome to 2.4. We are going to be adding and subtracting decimals. Now I included a couple of little one comic and another little helpful hint sheet here. It says right here, to add decimals, I pretend I'm a top sergeant and say, all right, you decimal points, line up. Now, when we are dealing with adding and subtracting decimals, we have to always line up the decimals. And so you're going to see that today in our lesson and in the things that we do. So, and this is another little helpful thing. Rule number 1, line them up. Rule number 2, drop it down. Rule number 3, fill them in. And rule number 4, add or subtract. So I'll go back to this a couple of different times in this lesson, but this is the big idea today, that we line them up, line up the decimals. We're going to drop the decimal down into the answer. You're going to fill them in. That means that we put zeros in the blanks, if there are any, and then we're going to add or subtract. So here we go. As always, we're going to begin with the bell work. So here we go. So we have you practicing changing these improper fractions into mixed numbers and mixed numbers into improper fractions, because we can see as teachers that this is something that a lot of students struggle with. So just remember, when we are talking about this, we are really saying 15 divided by 9. I know that you're used to saying that that's a fraction. Well, the fraction bar just means divide. So we're going to take 15. Oh, you can't see my crayon there. 15 and divide it by 9. Well, it goes once. That's 6. So 1 6/9. And then we always look at the fraction. Does it simplify? Is there a number that goes into both of those numbers? Well, 3 does. So 3 goes into 6 twice, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. So my final answer is 1 2/3. So 1 2/3. On this one, remember that we multiply, then add. So 2 times 9 is 18. Then we add 5 is 23. And then we just take that denominator and it's the same. So 23/9. Pretty simple one. All right, moving on to something a little bit different. I don't think that we've talked much about negatives so far this year. This is an integer. An integer right here, -5. The opposite of it is 5. And the absolute value of this number is also 5. So the integer, -6, well, the opposite 6, and the absolute value is 6. We'll talk more about absolute value as we get along further. The integer is 5, the opposite is -5, but the absolute value is also 5. Absolute value is often written like this, these 2 big lines. And what it means is how far away is it from 0? So if you look at your number line, either in your journal or maybe your teacher has one at the front of the room, look up there and see the number -5. Well, how far away is it from 0? It's 5 spaces away from 0. It's a positive number. Absolute values are going to be positive most of the time. There's only a couple of instances where it can be negative, and we'll talk about that a little later on in the year. Number 3, find the volume. Volume means that we take all the length, the height, and the width. Or if you want to look at it this way, the height, the base, and the width. So 3 times 5 times 2. So 15 times 2 equals 30 feet. And because we used 3 different measurements, it's cubed. Okay, so our answer is 30 feet cubed. There you go. You got your bell work done. Let's move on. All right. So here's some of the different things you're going to run into with adding and subtracting decimals. You can see here, I have a couple of examples, and there's not really any vocabulary words that we go on here, but there's the things that I talked about earlier, where you're going to line them up, you're going to fill them in, or drop them down, then fill them in, and then add or subtract. And what that means is that we have to line up the decimals. So you can see I've lined up the decimals. That's key. You can also see that they drop the decimal down into the answer part right here. Now, the zeros, they added in because there were blanks there. If there's spots that there are no digits, add zeros there. And then you're just going to add like always. 0 plus 5, 0 plus 1, 3 plus 1 is 4, 1 plus 0 is 1, and then 3 plus 0 is 3. And you have that number right there. 3 and 1,415 ten thousandths is, I believe, how you say that. That's tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. That's correct. Subtraction's very much similar. You're going to line them up. You're going to drop the decimal down. You're going to put a 0 in if there's not a place. And then you're going to subtract like usual. If there's borrowing, you borrow, just like you learned back in 2nd and 3rd grade. So it's not very difficult. You just have to remember that those decimals have to line up. That's where I see a lot of 6th graders make mistakes. I just forget that. Let's move on. All right, so if you look at page 40 in your notes, you're going to see this paper. And we're going to fill out part of it today and then part of it tomorrow. So you can see right here, we're going to be focusing on addition and subtraction. So let's take a look at this really quick. So number 1 right here, it says line up the addends by place value, or line up the decimals. Write in placeholder zeros, add right to left, decomposing and composing as you go. And that just means solve it like you always would. So let's do that. Let's go, okay, 4, and if we enter a decimal for that, it would be 4.0. Then we have 2.5. Then we have 6 and 75, or 73 hundredths. And now we can see that we need to put some zeros right here because they're missing some spots. Now we just add like usual. So we get 3. 5 plus 7 is 12. And then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. There's our decimal. So pretty basic. Our subtraction, same thing. And I know it has a whole bunch of big words like subtrahend and minutend. Those are actually the technical terms for things when you subtract them. So we're just going to show you how to subtract them. 19 and 7/10. That 5 goes right here because the decimal has to line up. And 14 hundredths. And then we're going to fill in some zeros here because there's a space there and a space there. Now we're going to subtract 0. Can I have 0 and take 4 away from it? No, that doesn't make sense. So we're going to borrow. That becomes a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 6 minus 1 is 5. Drop my decimal. 9 minus 5 is 4. 1 minus 0 is 1. So 14 and 56 hundredths. So we got it right because you can see the answer is right there. And that's it for your notes. We went over addition and subtraction. We will go over multiplication tomorrow and division. And those are going to be a little bit different than what you're used to, but not too much. Let's move on. For your practice on this, we're actually going to do a class activity. So you'll be working with a partner. If you're doing this as a remote learner or you're doing this because you're absent from school, just move on to the assignment and do that. But if you're in class, you're going to be doing the practice in class. All right, moving on. All right, I'm looking at this assignment, and I think it's pretty easy. So I'm not going to do any of the questions. I am going to make sure that you know that there's some things that you need to do to get the answer correct. So number 1, I would say that you need to make sure that you rewrite this in a way that you can add it. So that top-down method, like I've showed you in the notes. So I would rewrite this and then make sure the decimals are lined up, and then you can add it. This same thing on the subtraction one, you're going to make sure that you rewrite it so the decimals line up, and then you'll subtract it. And then this one, you're looking for what they did wrong. I'm going to give you a hint. It has to do with this space right here. So make sure that you look at that and then write down in words what they did wrong. On this one, you order the sausage and eggs breakfast, and your friend orders the ham omelet. How much is the bill before taxes and tip? So it's together. You're trying to find out how much yours and your friend's breakfast is before the tax and tip. So you don't even have to worry about what that is. You just have to worry about take yours and your friends and put them together. And that you should either know that's add or subtract. You figure that out. Number 5, how much more does the ham and cheese omelet cost than the cheese omelet? So how much more means subtract. So you'll be subtracting on that one. And number 6, evaluate the expression. So we're going to add these two, and then we'll get a total, and then we'll subtract that off of it, and then you'll get a total answer here. So give that a try. It should not be that difficult. Today's lesson is pretty straightforward, and it's a review, so you guys should be very good at this, I would hope. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.